Hey guys, this is Arab Wrestlers You Should Know. I'm Randy Ritchie, and this is sponsored by Premier Pro Wrestling, being brought to you without commercials or YouTube commercials. So please be cool, like, and subscribe. And today we're going to talk about somebody that I legitimately love. I'm talking about Milad Akbar. Now, when Premier Pro Wrestling first started, getting back into the wrestling industry was the last thing I wanted to do after being used, abused, and chewed up and seeing so much opportunity burnt to the ground, literally burnt to the ground. I was there while it was burning. The catastrophe that was TNA Impact, I was production manager there and so many other things. I got sucked into the wrestling industry again, and more on that tomorrow because we're going to do two parts on Milad because there's just so much there. I had seen a handful of guys at the time, and I wasn't sure the current climate because I spent 2 or 3 years, I want to say 3 years, on the road between IWA Puerto Rico and Puerto Rico, and then also on the road for a year and change with TNA Wrestling. So when I came back, I was surprised at how much the climate had changed. There were a handful of people that could do some cool things, but my God, the thinking, the culture is just, you couldn't call it pro wrestling, to be honest with you. Nothing that I was used to anyway. And you're hearing from a guy who cut his teeth at in the USWA territory in Memphis and world-class wrestling, world-class championship wrestling in Dallas. And there was one point, my second time in Memphis, where I was wrestling 15 times a week in the locker room with some of the greats. There were two guys that stood out at the time. One was Lorenzo Hood. He wrestled for me as Alpha Samoa. We got him at WWE NXT tryout. The other, and I don't even know how this happened, I want to say this is probably how the guy thinks because he's incredibly smart, intelligent, and street smart, Milad Akbar. They stood out heads above everybody else, and not just their appearance. Milad's in-ring. He was trained by some momos. He knew they were momos. In one way, shape, or form with his intelligence, he had already passed them up, the people that trained him, and he'd only been in the wrestling industry a couple of years. When he came to me, there was so much to work with, and he was such a quick learner that we honed what he had to work with really quick. And luckily for Milad, I was still young enough to go ahead and get in the ring with him from time to time. And what was cool about Milad and the way Milad's mind worked was he could really take what he learned and realize being in ring with me for 10 minutes, what that was worth at the time, somebody that was a real wrestler. Now, talking about TNA, Dutch Mantel explained to me once that the reason I was fired is that I cared too much. I don't see that as a problem. You know, it's caused me problems, but yes, I do care too much and I get emotionally invested in people. The right people, you know, and Milad was one of those people. He's very easily, he's likable, man. I mean, that's the bottom line to it. He's a likable guy. But once you get in there and you realize the work ethic and the good looks and the discipline that goes behind that incredible body at such a young age at the time, we're talking about 19, 18 is when I met him. I screwed with him for about a year, training, retraining, booking, agenting, putting the PPW belt on him. I just wanted more, man. So, you know, I wanted a lot for this guy, and what I really wanted for him was to live up to his potential. Anyhow, Milad Akbar's grandparents fled from Iraq because they couldn't be Christians in Iraq. At that time in Iraq, you would be executed for being a Christian. They fled to Iran. Now, in Iran, things were better than being executed but there was huge discrimination against Christians in Iran. And I bet you that there still is to this day. Let me give you some examples, and this is per Milad. They couldn't have, and there wasn't, Christian churches. When they wanted to get together and worship, they had to do it secretly at people's homes, or they would go out into the woods or the forest, and do this on the QT. It's like a speakeasy during Prohibition just to worship, Another example, when Milad's parents got married, they wanted to have a Christian wedding. That's their choice, okay? So they did it on the QT in one way, shape, or form. People who were their friends and neighbors that didn't know they were Christian found out they were Christian. They went way out, I guess, into some sort of woods, forest, or somewhere in nature. And their people that they thought were their friends or were their friends and neighbors up to that point got together and threw rocks at them from behind trees, etc., during the ceremony. That tells you how bad it was. So when Milad's father and mother started their family, when Milad was born, the family was planning on coming to the U.S., and what they would do over there is the family and the extended family would get together and they would pool their money, and then they would take turns sending over relatives to the United States where they could be truly free and chase that American dream. Well, in Milad's case, the year it was supposed to happen, he was 7 years old, and his father died quickly. His father died unexpectedly, and that put a monkey wrench into that plan. This is a real thing that's just beyond me, but it's real as can be. At the age of 7 years old in the Arab culture, the firstborn male son is the head of the house, and Milad had to be the man of the house at 7 years old. 7 years old, he did work in the family business, and he worked there for 5 years until he was 12. Then the family pooled their money together and got Milad, his brother, and his mother, who he's extremely close to the United States. He came here at 12 years old. He was already a great athlete, and at 12 years old, he fell in love with bodybuilding, powerlifting, and professional wrestling. He learned English so quickly, and this is a young man that can speak Farsi, proper Arabic, and in 5 years, at the age of 17, he graduated early from high school. By the age of 19, like I said, after working with Milad for a year, we got him a WWE NXT tryout, and we're going to go ahead and talk tomorrow about what happened at that tryout and what happened after, and more about Milad Akbar. Anyway, this is Arab Wrestlers You Should Know, and this is a real, unbelievably inspirational story about a real great depiction, a male depiction of an Arab American, Milad Akbar. Again, note, there are no YouTube commercials on this, so please be cool, like and subscribe. And you can support Premier Pro Wrestling at the links in the description. But also, please take note that Milad Akbar has a shirt in our official merchandise store at Pro Wrestling Tees.